And I think we'll get to the point where in the future you could, if you wanted, make a game entirely with voice. So by talking to the system, working with it over the course of an hour, and it's up leveling what you're doing. Instead of typing
Wow.
every single thing using your mouse, we can have AI take your intent and produce it for you.
How will AI change games? Hello and welcome to TechFirst. My name is John Koetsier. The scope of the question I just asked is impossibly broad. AI is being used and will be used in many cases, have been used for a long time in all aspects of game development. We're talking gameplay, game management, smart NPCs, endless levels, 3D interactions, faster development, more insane art, global communications with billions of players, regardless of what language they speak, and importantly, democratization of game making. There's so much. Here to chat about some of the biggest changes is an OG of AI. He's a professor of computer science, a former research scientist at Nvidia. Tell me you kept your stock options. He's a consultant at Unity. He's the senior architect, was the senior architect at Oculus Technology, and he's the current chief scientist at one of the hottest game platforms on the planet, Roblox. Welcome, Morgan.
Thanks, John. Great to be here with you.
It is great to have you again. Last time we chatted, we were on stage at Collision in Toronto. What's new since then?
So lots is new. One of the most exciting things for me at Roblox was you and I had talked about our 4D AI initiative. We had just announced publicly at Collision. And this is the idea of going beyond 1D text, 2D images and materials, even the kind of nascent state of the art of can you make 3D models with generative AI, which is very much an emerging area, not an established category. And what we announced at Collision was going beyond that to 4D, and interaction is that fourth dimension. This is how it weighs into games. So not just can you make 1D, 2D, 3D objects with AI, but can you bring them to life? And the exciting thing for me is that we've since shipped several of our initial features in that space. The most exciting one, I think, is our avatar auto setup, because it goes directly to letting anybody make their own 3D persona from scratch now, instead of having to just choose from an existing catalog. So we get a full catalog, all the clothing, all the makeup, all the accessories. And you can, if you can't find what you want, you can make it now with AI. So super exciting to
This is super exciting. And we're going to dive super deep into that because this is like next generation, next level stuff. I mean, like we're getting excited about, image generation. Well, that was maybe a year ago, half a year ago. We're getting excited about video generation, AI video generation, right? And that's still, you see some cool stuff and you see some, oh wow, that went weird places, right? And you're talking about like real time, interactive, multiplayer, stuff that works. So that's super hardcore. We're going to get into all that. I want to hit some stuff first. One thing that I saw, VC Matthew Ball, he wrote a post and wow, it was pretty impressive. Some of the numbers on Roblox, 380 million monthly average users. That's twice Steam. That's 3 times PlayStation. That's 3 times the annual users of Switch. That's 5x Minecraft. Wow. And more than twice Fortnite. And he said it's likely Roblox has more monthly users than the entire AAA gaming ecosystem combined. This is astonishing stuff. 6 billion hours spent a month on Roblox. That's double what people spend on Disney Plus. And also the hours per daily average user are growing. So it's not just numbers growing, but the amount of time that people are spending is growing. It's growing in APAC, rest of the world, not just Canada, the United States, other places like that. Interesting fact he mentioned was that Roblox never contracted after the pandemic. I mean, most games did, right? Games exploded as a category during the pandemic. At home, lots of time. What you can do? Play games. Roblox never contracted. And he said your run rate spending should hit $4 billion this year, more than any other game. Like, wow, what's going on?
So, yeah, it's a very exciting time, I think, for the space, for the platform, Roblox. Um, I've really valued my past interactions with Matthew. We've definitely met on stage and interacted a lot. And I think especially his early writing on the metaverse, which is a term that I think in its classic sense, the sort of, snow crash, metaverse, social 3D, UGC interaction, Roblox is definitely one of the most credible platforms in terms of trying to realize that science fiction vision. And so I think Matthew's very educated in this space and does a great job in it. Um, Setting aside his exact article, the directionally, yes, the excitement is real. I just pulled up. I was curious. I was looking at our daily active user chart from 2018, so pre-pandemic, to Q2 2024. It is basically a straight line. Like you cannot see a pandemic blip on it. So when you say, "Hey, has Roblox has not contracted since the end of the pandemic?" We exited 2021 with about 40 million daily active users. Uh, we just wrapped a quarter at 80 million. So not contracted is a funny way of saying doubled. So I think the important message there is not the 80 million daily active users, 79.5 to be precise. But it's the fact that that trend has been so powerful. And what's most exciting to us inside the company is not the raw number. Our
Hmm.
goal is 1 billion people connected with positivity and optimism. And, uh, you know, 80 million, 100 million, whatever. Like we are going for a good chunk of the world, experiencing a civil online 3D social space together. So where we're at now is only the beginning of the growth. The exciting thing is what you referenced. So our growth in Japan, in Korea, the fact that we are growing more rapidly outside of our sort of home base in North America, of US and Canada, where Roblox started, the fact that we're growing more rapidly outside of our classic demographic of under 13 is now 17 to 24 is our biggest demographic. To me, that's the story, not the absolute number, but the diversity of users, the diversity across countries, of experiences, kinds of 3D interaction. That to me is really fulfilling. That's where we've always targeted. And we have such great traction going 2024, halfway through, and it looks like our best year ever.
Amazing. And that upscaling in the age demographic bodes well for monetization as well. That said, we didn't come to talk about numbers or monetization or other stuff like that. We want to talk about AI in games. And you're working on some very, very cool stuff: image generation, translation, safety, which is critical, obviously, when you still have a lot of kids on the platform, and this 4D generative AI. Where do you want to start?
Let me start with safety because that's as a company where we start.
Go ahead. What do you, let me frame it a second, because we've seen a lot of attempts to use AI to manage safety. A
Mhm.
lot of them with Meta, right? Facebook doing certain things. And it's hard. False positives abound. Other comes through. People find interesting ways of spelling words or referring to things in cryptic ways. And this is a challenging problem.
Absolutely. So safety is a form of security from a technical perspective. And security is always a case of the bad actors are going to keep upping their game and you just have to stay ahead of them. It's not a static thing where you can release a technology and say we've checked the box on safety. You have to keep iterating constantly. You have to stay ahead.
Mhm.
And as technology evolves, it has good uses and it has less good uses. And so our job is to make sure the good uses are outweighing, especially on the safety side.
Mhm.
So a great example of a new safety tech that we just released, and we moderate everything on the platform with AI now, 100%. So video, audio, images, text, whole 3D experiences, avatars themselves, clothing. So it's a really monumental task. It's all the kinds of media you can imagine. We are moderating everything, not just text. And there's all kinds of cute things people try to do to circumvent them. And one of the most powerful features we have is that we're now using AI throughout that whole process. It used to be a collection of classic safety technologies. It's called traditional natural language processing, for parsing sentences for nouns and verbs, taking speech and turning it into text and then moderating the text. But then you miss the nuance, you miss the sarcasm. One of the most exciting things to me is not just that we've rolled out AI across the platform for safety, but that we did it for voice, and we did it for voice for all ages. And this has been a holy grail of safety tech. And, I would say for better or for worse, but I think for worse, traditionally the reputation in 3D spaces of voice chat is pretty bad. So most of the industry has not been able to keep up with modern AI. It hasn't been able to handle slang, and hasn't been able to handle just the enormous technical challenge of the bandwidth of millions of audio streams simultaneously and in real time trying to moderate those. So that's been a real challenge for the field as a whole. And I think the gaming segment in particular has done a lot of work on that, has tried hard, but has not been successful historically. And so this was a challenge. It was one of the things that we set out when we founded sort of our R&D lab at Roblox when they came back 3.5 years ago, was we said, we want to do real-time voice. Ultimately, we want to do voice translation. So you can speak to people in different languages. We want to ultimately do voice fonts, it's called. So basically voice role-playing how to transition. So I'm speaking in my voice, but you're hearing a dragon. So it fits my character, right? So the avatar is not just the virtual 3D persona, but it's also your voice. And that's also important for privacy. We're not there in either of those technologies yet on the translation and the voice transformation. However, we do have research papers. We're getting pretty close. It's mostly about closing the gap on making it cost effective in real time. What we have, I think, really nailed is the voice moderation. So we have the world's first voice moderation system that will monitor 100% of voice chat on Roblox. This is deployed.
Yeah.
And it works for all kinds of voices, really difficult. Most traditional voice stuff, if you look at even projects like, big things like Siri and the Google Assistant and Alexa, they're trained on adult voices. They're trained on adult voices in a noise-free environment. You have a 12-year-old, a 15-year-old on a playground holding their phone. The microphone's getting wind noise, right? So it's a really difficult, this isn't the easy, you're standing in a sound booth trying to filter it. So we've cracked that case. We solved that. So for all of our 13 and up is what we enable voice chat for today as an extra safety precaution. And if a user has enabled voice chat, it goes through a moderation system and we are able to flag all kinds of bad action there. And then we have a really nice way of dealing with it. Because again, that might be a 13-year-old, right? This isn't, they repeated something they shouldn't have said. They said something out of context. I think instantly banning someone from a platform is basically you're inflaming a situation that didn't need to be inflamed. And so we want to turn down the flame usually. And so what we do is when we detect problems, depending on the severity, we give you a little prompt just explaining, hey, you're in timeout. Look, you might not have known, but the thing you said was not appropriate in this context. Here's why. We're turning off your mic for 30 seconds so you can cool down and reflect on what just happened. And we're going to turn it back on. And if this happens again, it's going to escalate quickly. And again, it depends on the kind of infraction. But I think this is really key, is that we wanted to use AI not in a way where we would instantly be punitive, but in a way where it would actually contribute to steering the community in a more constructive direction. And it's a really effective way of doing it because it means that then we also have an opportunity to have an appeals process, to have ultimately a human moderator, if we want, come and take a look at the exact case, the transcript, the context in 3D, because we want to be fair to everyone. And our goal is not to sort of have winners and losers, but to have everybody be a winner. And so we're trying to move players who are in that category of saying inappropriate things into the category of being constructive and staying on platform.
So you blew my mind when you said that 100%, of the content on Roblox is being checked by AI. We're talking about this. We mentioned already 6 billion hours a month spent. It's people talking. That's real time interactions. That's text, which is obviously easier. But it's the things like clothing that you mentioned. Unbelievable. Do you have any metrics as to how successful you are, or how much you catch, or anything like that? How do you gauge your success?
Yeah, it's a great question. So that we have a tremendous number of metrics for looking at all aspects of performance and safety. And as I said earlier, safety is it's ultimately this game where people are going to keep trying to thwart the system. Sometimes playfully, they don't know better. Sometimes harmlessly, maliciously. They're trolls. They're and sometimes seriously maliciously, right? They're trying to do something really bad on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
We've been excellent at catching people who are trying to do something really bad on the platform, preventing the harm. We work really closely with law enforcement on that. Um, Obviously, the exact numbers around that aren't something I can share, but it's sort of a point of pride to me that we are, I think, one of the absolute best in the entire industry at making sure that we protect our users, especially our younger users. In some cases, specific groups that have not found a home online, that have found that Roblox is a safe space for them. To me, that's just a really values aligned, really important thing, and it goes beyond business operations to core values and about the kind of world we want to live in.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't solve all the world's problems, but maybe I can help solve all the world's problems when they come to Roblox. And I think I could give them an ideal world there.
I-
On the moderation side for the assets and voice, basically we are currently at levels that we measure as superhuman. So years ago we had large numbers of human moderators, and that was never desirable. So it's obviously expensive, but more than that, it's a job nobody wants.
it's an awful job. People
Yeah.
get so damaged by it.
Exactly. So the idea is like no human being should be exposed to that kind of content. Even if they're an adult, even if it's their job, even if they have training, and it's just that's something that is a great use for AI, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
taking a task that no human wants to do, automating it, and in doing so, protecting privacy and all of that. But we deploy when we hit superhuman levels. So we don't deploy when we say, oh, 80% of human, but there's a cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
We actually target saying, is this the best way to do it? And when it is, we'll switch over. And so for us, there is a cost savings. It's been great for our operations. It's been great for scalability. It used to be as more, right? That doubling in the last couple of years, we had to double our moderators if we were doing everything
Yeah.
manually with safety.
Yeah.
And by automating, it means that no, we get these economies of scale from our supercomputing clusters. And so it costs us less than twice as much to do the moderation, but we can scale without limit there. We can just keep throwing more machines in there. We don't have to hire more and more employees.
Yeah.
So we're able to have sort of a stable size of Roblox company. We're able to automate some tasks that no human wants to do. And we're providing best in breed safety to the whole world. So win-win.
Love it. Love it. You reminded me of the Florence Nightingale quote there. We can't do everything, but I can do one thing. And so we handled safety. I do want to talk about translation briefly, but you kind of already talked about it, right? Because you're enabling, if you need to know, if you're going to moderate, you need to know what people are saying. You need to be able to translate that. I want to make sure we leave enough time for image generation, which is critical for like game making
Mhm.
and democratizing game making, and your 4D generative AI. Maybe briefly hit translation. You're trying to build a community, a safe place for 1 billion people. That's a lot of different languages.
It is. We operate currently in about 180 countries around the world. And there are about 20 languages that we sort of supported, but there's about 45 languages people speak. And in some cases, it's a little tricky because what's a language, right? There are dialects.
Yes.
There are sort of within a language, there's all kinds of slang. There's Portugal speaking Portuguese, but there's Brazil speaking Portuguese.
Yes.
It's a slightly different variation. It's a different accent.
Yeah.
And both of which are big countries on Roblox. So that was one of our first languages that we did beyond English was actually Portuguese. Most countries or most companies go to French as their next
Yeah.
language.
Or Spanish.
Uh,
Yeah.
but we happen to have a huge population in Brazil that was embracing the platform. We said, okay, we want to make sure that all the safety works for them as well. And so it's definitely absolutely a lot of languages. We tend to train in a small set of representative languages first when we're doing our testing on AI.
Mhm.
And then the next thing we do, and we make sure to specifically, we don't just start with English, which is sort of the dominant language within the company. We start with about 5 languages. And then we quickly spread out and make sure that everything we're doing will transfer. And
Mhm.
to be clear about the voice, which is very exciting, and we're now looking at this for images as well. For voice, we don't turn it into text for moderation. We're directly moderating the voice, so that's how we get all of the nuance.
Mhm.
And that was technology that was great collaboration of R&D and engineering partners across the company. I got to personally work on it because it was one of the things that I was really excited about in terms of that safety, the internationalization. It was sort of, hit all of my personal goals. Um, we released that model, by the way, as open source.
Oh,
Or an open model. So we have a technical paper that just came out. We went to the Interspeech conference. We told the world how we built the safety system. And we thought, this is so important, right? Like I said, the rest of the industry has not done a great job on voice safety. I think we had some really good breakthroughs. Let's share this. So we took a version of the model, not the exact one that runs on Roblox, but we took a version of the model and released that to the whole world so other companies can go ahead and use that, because we think it's too important to keep that kind of technology to ourselves. We really want safety to be everywhere, not just on Roblox.
yeah.
So for the translation, yeah, we try to do everything effectively native in its language. We don't translate from media like voice to text. We also don't translate Indonesian to English and then moderate. We do it natively in Indonesian.
hmm Yeah, that was interesting. I read your blog post about that. And you didn't do like a translation module of a language to a language. You did them all at once,
Mhm.
in some sense. Super interesting, super cool.
And it's as a scientist, right? This sort of goes beyond the scope of what we need for the product in the short term, but I think in the long term is the right kind of thinking. Um, you have to be careful when you draw analogies from AI systems to, the way that humans think. That there isn't a lot of credible evidence that those are necessarily particularly similar, even though it's a biologically inspired model. It's pretty heavy on the inspired rather than the directly modeling. Um, but it is the case that when you build these systems, it doesn't just help you solve the problem in front of you. If you do it right, and this is the point of sort of R&D versus engineering, it gives you insight about the problem itself. And that will help you solve the next 3 or 4 challenges, right? You haven't just knocked one thing off, you're understanding the space better. So what is the space of human communication? What is the space of safety moderation? And so I think one of the early speculative insights that we've gained from doing a lot of this kind of safety and moderation technology is that there seems to be some commonality across the language, right? The transfer is really good between even very dissimilar languages, and they can get extremely dissimilar. You can have languages that are tonal. You can have languages where the verb is at the end of the sentence versus, in between the direct languages that have gender, languages that don't have gender. And so I think we are starting as a community to learn a bit about language, about what it means to have a constructive interaction with someone independent of language. There's some things that seem to be sort of deeply embedded in human culture. And I think this probably, you mentioned you're recently in Honduras. I don't know if you speak Spanish fluently or not, but
Poco
it's
Spanish, Poco.
perfect. So it's definitely the case that, even in a language that you cannot communicate in very effectively, I've traveled around the world. It's one of the best parts about being a scientist. That I find that, your body language, your tone of voice, your interaction, the politeness, the exact details vary across of etiquette, vary across countries. But that in general, there is sort of a pan-human culture of I'm friendly, I'm polite, I need
Mhm.
assistance, I'm offering assistance. And I think we're starting to see beyond what sort of traditional, sort of linguistics has gotten us. We're starting to see that because AI can process such huge amounts of data, right? This corpus of all communication has been happening on Roblox this year. That's even just the texting, that's 1 trillion messages, right? Nobody's ever been able to analyze data at that scale and put it into a single system. So we're starting to get some insights about, oh, it seems like we can't exactly put a box and say, this is what positivity and civility is as a mathematical equation. That's not going to happen. But we can definitely say this interaction seems much closer to positive and civil than it does to, a negative interaction. And that's really powerful. So I think the future of AI moderation is going to go beyond here's the exact terms of service, here are lists of appropriate words, things like that. And in the far future, I'm speculating that it'll be much more about in the way that a human does, looking at an interaction, looking at the participants, looking at their relationship. Oh, this is a parent and child. And
Yeah.
they're saying, go to bed. That's okay. But there are other cases where it might not be okay for someone to say, go to bed, or I'm taking you to bed now, right?
Yeah.
And having a system that can understand that level of nuance, I think that's the potential of AI. And that's one of the things that we've never seen before in safety systems.
Well, that just blew my mind. You're building a universal translator with emotional intelligence and contextual relevance. Super, super interesting. Okay, we gotta hit 4D generative AI because I mean that's kind of the holy grail, right? You run a world, you run a virtual world, and if you're going to have generative AI, sure you can have generative AI for objects and clothing, and you have that, and maybe we'll get to that as
Mhm.
well. But everything has to exist, not just in a 3D space, but in a moving 3D space, not just in a moving 3D space, but an interactive 3D space where things change. Talk about what you're doing there.
So the key to Roblox's growth, right? We had this runaway growth that started a little before the pandemic, went straight through and keeps going. And I mentioned this sort of, I'm very proud of this 80 million daily active users, right? That was a nice milestone, even though it's a small step along the way to where we're going. Um, that growth is fueled by having a great platform, running on every possible device. Right? So we got Android, VR headsets, set-top boxes, and consoles. Um, but the content is why people are there, right? It's social interactions with their friends, both real world friends and online friends, and doing something inside of a 3D world, having a great 3D evidence. So all of that content is what keeps players coming back. That amazing content, Roblox produces zero of it. So part of our community, and hopefully someday 100% of our community, creates content. It's a user generated content platform, UGC. And there are people who make their entire livelihood selling content at Roblox. There are people for whom it's a fun pastime, right? So just like any kind of creation, right? There are people who make clothing professionally, and there are people who are knitting at home for their family. So that's where the content comes from. It's from our wonderful community. We have millions of creators. There are 5 million active experiences every day. So there's an even longer tail of total experiences, but there are 5 million of them that somebody went to every single day.
Hmm.
And that's an incredible amount of content. As the user base grows, we need the content to grow. It has to grow roughly proportionally. And the challenge there is that Roblox has created with Studio, with our importers, wonderful best of breed previous generation tools. So they're the easiest 3D generation tools to learn, but it's still 3D generation. You still have to know a lot about 3D modeling, about programming. It doesn't matter that we have the friendliest programming language on earth. It's still programming, right? That's a real thing you got to learn. Um, AI came along, generative AI came along, and we started embracing it, started playing with it at just the right time in our growth curve, where we said, we're going to have this problem. How do we produce content? And going back for roughly the last 15 years, the games industry and the film industry had exactly this problem of they couldn't produce content fast enough. They were victims of their own success.
Hmm.
And it was one of the things I've worked on in previous roles in the industry and given a lot of talks about. You just draw these curves and you say, Hollywood won't be able to make a movie in 10 years because the budget of the movie will be, the entire
10
planet
million.
GDP, right? So everybody on Earth is going to be like editing pixels that Lucasfilm. So Roblox is in the same space. It's still 3D content. It's a different level of fidelity. It's a different set of tools, but it's still 3D content. That's hard. AI is the answer. AI is what enables us to lower the barriers to creation so
Mhm.
that people with great ideas, the strength of their ideas will shine through, and they don't have to spend 1 year, 3 years, 5 years learning how to program, learning how to do 3D modeling, learning how to do rigging, animation. So our
Mhm.
avatar auto setup already does this for you for the avatar, so for your character. And it's amazing. It's one of the most technical aspects of 3D content creation is making characters
Mhm.
that have so much nuance, and you have to stay out of the uncanny valley and all of that. So we've automated that. You can go back and edit it if you are a professional, save you a ton of time. But if you're not a professional, it means that you can go zero to avatar by yourself for the first
Mhm.
time. We have our studio assistant. It's a conversational AI you chat with it, like literally chat, microphone chat, and it helps you to build things. So you're inside of our studio tool, but it's doing a lot of the work for you. And I think we'll get to the point where in the future you could, if you wanted, make a game entirely with voice. So by talking to the system, working with it over the course of an hour, and it's up leveling what you're doing. Instead of typing
Wow.
every single thing using your mouse, we can have AI take your intent and produce it for you.
Wow. Make an entire game with your voice. That would be that is mind blowing. Absolutely incredible. And it's interesting as well because you talked about, hey, we need to grow the amount of content as the number of users scale. Absolutely. But people are also getting different perceptions of what a game should have, what a game should look like, how a game should operate, how rich it should be, how good it should be, how interact, all that stuff.
Mhm.
And so you not only have to create more, you have to always be upping the ante for quality also, correct?
Yeah. And one of the, and I think quality is exactly the right word. And I want to dig into a little bit about what quality means to us. Um, Quality, one part of it is visual fidelity,
Mm,
but it's honestly, it's the smallest part. And this is really important to understand. And I think, um, to understand why is Roblox so popular? Why is Roblox growing so fast? Because if you look at Roblox on the lowest end devices, we're really proud of the fact that we scale all the way down to 32-bit, 2
mhm,
gigabyte Android, really low end devices by the industry standards, orders of magnitude below what, my enthusiast desktop gaming
mhm,
PC is.
mhm,
So obviously the visuals you get, if you have the latest, esports gaming rig with a 4090 GPU rig, the visuals you get are phenomenal there from a AAA game that probably took about 5,000 person years to produce. Most of the games I worked on in the industry were about that. So a few thousand people working for a few years. Um, that's very different than what you expect from the visual fidelity from the typical Roblox game, which is 3-person months of development, right? So
mhm,
really fast iteration cycles on Roblox.
mhm,
Um, and yet the players are saying, right, they're voting with their feet, they're voting with their wallets. They're saying this is high quality. This is in some sense higher quality than some of the AAA games or movies, right?
mhm,
That's where a different generation is spending their time now is on Roblox. And it's because it's quality is visual fidelity, but it's the interaction. It's the community, right? It's having that positive, supportive community around you so that they're building you up instead of pulling you down.
mhm,
And it's about new kinds of interaction. So one of the experiences on Roblox that's been really popular lately is Dress to Impress. And I started playing this with my team on Fridays. We take our lunch break and we all play different experiences on Roblox together.
nice.
And we
Smart.
try to get away from our recommendations, right? So we'll use someone else's recommended because we want to find things that are different than what we personally are used to experiencing.
Mhm,
And we hopped into Dress to Impress, and it's this. You're thinking, oh, I'm going to play a video game, or it's a video game that the marketing images make it look it's targeted at female identified players. I don't know, like how this is going to map to like my experience, and it was amazing. We loved it. We were going to play it for 10 minutes, and we ended up playing it for the full lunch hour because it was our favorite game that day. And what Dress to Impress is you're sort of in a mall with your avatar, and your avatar is kind of like a model catwalk kind of character, and you make an outfit to a prompt. Like the prompts will be, fall fashion or something like
mhm,
that.
mhm,
And you go and you pick out your plaid skirt and your nice hat and on your handbag. And then there's sort of a community rated, the timer goes off.
mhm,
Everybody's avatar walks on the catwalk and everybody communally rates each other.
mhm,
Right?
mhm,
And so you have it's kind of like a game show. It's kind of like
mhm,
a party game. Right? It's very different than what you might think of when someone says video game. This is an area that we categorize as social role playing. Also
mhm,
very different from what role playing traditionally means for video games,
mhm,
where it's sort of you're walking through a movie, but you have some choices. Role playing on Roblox is literally you're embracing a role. It's kind of improv, right? Theater like. Um, Dress to Impress is huge. Charlie XCX just announced a collection on it after she had done her concert on Roblox. Um, I honestly only know who Charlie XCX is because she happened to have a music video crossover with Billie Eilish last week that my daughter was showing me. Um, but but I'm informed she's cool, unlike me. So big things happening, right? Lots of crossover from different media, lots of different worlds coming together. So Dress to Impress, great example of something that maybe it's a game, maybe it's not a game, it's some other kind of thing. But that's the kind of diversity, creativity that to me is getting at quality, right? No one was offering an experience like that in AAA gaming. That didn't
And it
exist.
can only happen. It can only
Right.
happen in a 3D world that is social with
Absolutely. Well, and
generative
where it's
elements.
user generated.
Yeah.
1 million people are making new ideas on Roblox every day. And if one of them is a winner, then it's great for all of us. We all get to experience that new thing.
Mhm. So cool. Very, very cool. Absolutely love it. Our time is pretty much done. Maybe let's tie a knot on this and say, hey, if there's one thing you could wave a magic wand at and fix in terms of AI generation and gaming in the next 3 or 6 months, what would you do?
One thing I would fix in AI and gaming, I'm just thinking my list is like I have 1,000. I'm trying to
Now we're in
figure out
prioritization.
either the most important or the most interesting of them.
Let's
Um,
go interesting.
so I think, well, I'm going to go with most important, but I'm going to try and spin it as most interesting. So I think one of the biggest challenges in AI today sounds completely uninteresting unless you work in the field, which is realistically, AI is primarily not limited by the quality of our data anymore. 10 years ago, we were. We've now gotten really good as a field and Roblox as a company at producing high quality data. Roblox has been really leading about making sure the creators control the rights to their data so that we're training on stuff that is on platform. It's appropriate, but for which we've gotten explicit permission from our developers to use. So that used to be the limitation. Today, the limitation is actually machine efficiency. And so when we look at programs, there's a technical term called Kolmogorov complexity, which is sort of the how good could it be, right? Like if you compressed a file down, how small could it get if you squeezed out all redundancy? Computationally, like how many of these virtual neurons should you need for a task? And when we look at most of our systems, a large part of our R&D is spent not on improving quality. We're kind of there in quality. It's on making the system efficient enough at that quality level to be deployable, to be economically sustainable. And so why is this interesting? Well, I think the world is probably pretty interested in power efficiency, right? In green computing. So that's an area where every time we make something more efficient, we make our business better, right? We
Yeah.
monetize better, our profit margin gets better. But we're also consuming fewer resources to do the same task. So that's kind of that's a net positive that I think if you look at the scale of computing around the world, if you look at the scale of where AI is going, it's really important that we do it in a power efficient, green way.
Yeah.
And so I think if there's one problem I could wave a magic wand at, we know that it's possible to, as a field, to do AI about 10 times more efficiently than we are today.
Wow.
We don't know how to do it. It is the cutting edge of research. This is a $1 trillion problem if somebody can come up with a solution, but it's not going to be a silver bullet. It's all kinds of different things. And it's about really deeply understanding from first principles how modern AI systems, how these deep neural nets work, why they work so well, what causes them to work better or worse. And so if I could wave my magic wand, it would be 10x improvements in AI processor efficiency. I'm putting my money where my mouth is. It's something we work on every day. I think the rest of the field is, but I think that's a key thing for everyone in the world to be tracking is how are we doing as a field? How well are individual companies doing in that space?
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you so much for this time, Morgan. I really enjoyed it as last time and really appreciate your time.
Thank you, John. It's always a pleasure. I look forward to the next time, and I hope I'll see you on Roblox too soon. Take care.